So I'll give a little context, and then Angela, I'd love for you to introduce yourself. But we met, I think I cold messaged you maybe 2 months ago, and you work with HP Tech Ventures, and so you can explain to us the difference between HP and HP Tech Ventures because I was telling everyone I got that wrong earlier. Um, but you've had quite a career of funding startups, advising them, being on the board, and you had a pretty interesting investment thesis, which is similar to VCs, but also different because you have a little bit of a strategic angel that you broke down for me. So today, we have 35 founders on here, and I thought your perspective on the evolution of looking at VR as an investing category back in 2016-ish, 17 when you were starting, to kind of how that's evolved to today's ecosystem where you're focused on AI, you're focused on other types of things. It'd be good for us to understand from your investor perspective, like what's been the shift in mindset. And then, as I've helped founders over the last year in the VR industry specifically, it's been quite clear that everyone needs a 2D play. And honestly, taking that further, everyone probably needs an AI play if you really want to raise venture. And so it'd be good for us to maybe set the table and help explain that mindset to people. Everyone here is not purely AR VR, but I think if we can kind of, talk about the general trends, that would be really helpful.
Sure thing. And Don, I had forgotten you had a cold email via LinkedIn, so that's really hard to get through to me because I'm such a efficient or lazy person, depending on your perspective. So you must have
There's
really written a really
Angelo,
good
if there's one
email.
award, if there's one award I have in life, it's one of the best LinkedIn cold message DMers, and I wear that proudly.
All right, I have to go back and look at it and see what I
Yeah.
can learn from you. Nice to meet everybody again. Sorry I was late. So I've made 6 investments in the VR AR space. Five direct, one into the VR fund. Huge believer in the space. Like a lot of VCs, though, right? It's like the market did not get as big as we all thought it was going to be, right? Even despite COVID, even despite Meta, just pouring money into this space without any kind of regard to short-term P&L, I should say. So now, we're looking at more in AR. And I was telling Don, I was messaging with him earlier today. It's like, I can't talk about Humane. So I'm really sorry. I just want to address the dead cat or the big elephant in the room. I just can't talk about it.
And
We
just
just
just so
announced it
everyone
yesterday.
has the context, Humane just got bought for 100 million by HP, but it's a different company, so we're not going to talk about it.
No,
Just to
no, no,
clarify.
no, no, no. So, okay, maybe I was a quick message. There are two companies, and HP split up. There was HP Incorporated, where I work, and we acquired Humane, and we announced it yesterday. And my corp dev brethren did that. Then there's Hewlett Packard Enterprise, which is now a completely separate company, separate shareholders, board, CEO. So HP, my company, bought Humane. Um, I deal with equity investments versus M&A stuff. So I'll
Gotcha.
pass leads, be a subject matter expert, but I'm not, running our M&A group or contributing much to our M&A group. It's a separate kind of my cousins. So,
Gotcha. Okay.
what other questions do you have, Don?
So let's start with VR and then we'll expand towards the general market of investors right now. Can you walk us through? So you made one investment into the VR fund, which is Tipitat's fund as a limited
Yeah,
partner. And then you made
yeah,
5 investments into pure direct VR company.
yeah. So there was the best one known is probably Mojo Vision. They were trying to do an AR contactless company. Unfortunately, we had to let go of a bunch of people 2.25 years ago. Didn't have quite enough funding, and it's too hard. Now we're doing micro OLED, so high density displays for glasses, watches, etc. Another one is pretty well known is Ad Hoc Microsystems with a MEMS-based eye tracker. Two other ones are Thea, which is kind of pivoted out of VR so much. Pixo is still going at it. They're trying to be like a VR platform for like people like Chick-fil-A, et cetera. You want to run operations. And actually, Michael, what you're saying beforehand, you've got to have a 2D play, right? So Pixo has got the great customer Chick-fil-A trying to help people how to do batter a chicken or to make a shake. And it's like they're doing it in VR, but you're also seeing some uptick in 2D displays. It's just part of the enterprise workflow. We can get into that in a second. Another investment I did was a Canadian company called Aris MD. They do segmentation of any kind of DICOM data, MRI, X-rays, et cetera. You look at it in your VR headset, and voila, the surgeon or whoever can kind of have a roadmap of where they're going, right? Much better training purposes. And then I did another company called Palm Plugs, which is doing haptic VR glove, haptic glove, which can be used in VR, but also in other spaces as well. So that's a quick summary of the investments we've made in this space directly that we've announced.
All right, so I mean, those are pretty distinctly unique investments, each one, I would say.
Yeah,
What was the thesis back then when you were funding those companies? And can you give us the general time period for context?
sure thing. Oh man, I shouldn't. I'm gonna get it wrong. I'll go in order, rough order. The VR fund first. We like doing LP investments when we're getting our feet wet, right? And for deal flow and schmuck insurance and tip of tats, fantastic. And Marco is just very knowledgeable about the market. Then we did, I think, ad hoc, Mojo Vision. Then we did Thea, Pixo. Then I did Aris MD, or Aris MD might have been a little bit earlier. And then I just did Palm Plug recently. So it all bent. My thesis, and this is just me personally, is I am attached to a corporate VC, right? So I have fantastic engineers, I have PMs, I have salesmen, I have marketing people. All these people help me do due diligence. So where I see the synergy is you're a founder, you're a team, you have great technology, okay? That could be unproven, free revenue, free productization, and you're just gonna kill yourself. And you're just gonna work at this for 10 years, and this is your mission in life. I find that's what I love because I, for better or for worse, have become, I do business. By the way, I'm a PhD dropout in political economy of all things. So like, I'm not sure how I ended up here as a capitalist. Love the job, love what I'm doing, and I basically like I get to help people. I get to meet 5, 6, 700 founders, invest in 2, 3, 4 a year, and hopefully I'm giving people good advice along the way. And I do a lot of work with Berkeley Skytech Accelerator, Israeli Economic Mission, lots of different groups because it's like, hey, it's good for me short term and it's good for me long term. And it's just the ethos of being in Silicon Valley and being in tech. So I'm a strong believer in technology and team because I can help and my company can help you supplement on the business side. The dream is to make 20x on each investment, but most of the companies we invest in get a POC from HP, small sometimes, 50,000, 100,000. But some of them then go on to become partners of ours, right? And then it's like, whoa, you get $1 a widget for each, workstation you're on, or each tablet you're on, or each like that can really meaningfully change. It's hard to do. I don't control. Oh, wait, I don't do M&A. I don't do the BU partnerships. Like, what do you do, Angelo? Yeah, I'm the point into the spear in terms of investments. And I try to be the best BD person you could possibly have within HP, which I'm fairly confident. And then I just try to be like a regular VC, right? And try to do BD and help you hire people, et cetera. But for me, it's all about the team and the technology. And as get it, I wanted to be an engineer as an undergraduate, realized quickly that that's not going to work. So I went easy and I did finance instead.
What?
But I love helping engineers solve their business problems.
And so if you meet rounding down 500 companies a year, 500 founders, and you invest into rounding up 5 of them, about 1%, what kind of check sizes do you try to deploy into each company and how do you think about that?
Our first check sizes are typically $1 to $5 million. And historically, though, we've done slightly smaller checks. I've also gone up to $20 million. And we've gone from pre-seed all the way up to Series C. And we used to lead. About a year ago, I decided I didn't want to lead anymore. I didn't think that's our place to lead anymore for a variety of reasons, which I'm happy to double click into. But actually, I think since all these founders here, you want to be attentive about a CVC leading your round because what happens if their strategy changes, right? What happens if you're trying to sell to their competitors, right? Like I think CVCs can be amazingly beneficial to startups, but you have to really manage the relationships and get close, but not too close, okay? And understand, how am I paid? Am I incentivized to make you go 20x or am I happy if you go 2x? This way you could just understand the perspective of the people on your board or board observer or preferred shareholder, right? Because there's lots of means of control and influence that your investors will have on you.
Yeah, it's smart not to lead, I think. You probably can get into better deals too then because you can, work with the top VCs.
Absolutely. That, and because it's like, hey, we're adding, I love my job. Right. I mean, I've got to complain. I was just on a call that ran 7 minutes later. Woe is me. Right. I have to manage and deal with and work with my bureaucracy. But I'm Italian American. I'm used to dealing with bureaucracies. It's okay. But HP also gives me tremendous benefit, right? Because like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm super focused on only 5% of deals because I don't care about, you know, lots of different industries. Because I'm like, I have to draw lines pretty clearly to HP's products, not making HP's operations better, but it's like, how can your product, when we're doing VR headsets, can I cross sell your product? Can I white label your product? Can I co-brand your product? It could be hardware, it could be software, but it's kind of a narrow field. I go to CES, I only care about 5%, 4% of the companies. Like I still go to AWA, right? Augmented World Expo. I still go to GDC, Game Developer Conference, GTC. And it's just like some conferences you go to with a really narrow view, some you go to like, oh, every company here is interested, right?
Are you going to GDC this year or South by Southwest? We were just talking about that.
At South by Southwest, I had such a great time. I went 2 or 3 times and I decided, while it's fun, I couldn't in good conscience spend my HP money going there because for the deal flow,
Yeah.
it wasn't worth it. So I go to, if you know, CES, I'll go to Game Developers Conference, I'll go to GTC. I might go to Inquitel's conference this year. Slush is great in Finland. Um, Counter Club is another conference for CVCs in San Francisco. There's like a half dozen other ones I go to as well. And, it's like, wait, I should know all these, but it kind of fluctuates with HP strategies, right? Like we're looking at hybrid work. I went to InfoCon in Florida because that's like hybrid work.
Okay, so I'm gonna do two things. One, I want to understand the trends you're seeing because you have one of the best perspectives on where the puck's going. And so it'd be good to get that. And then I'd like to make this a pretty operational conversation between everyone here. And so after we get through the trends, can people start to raise their hands? I'll call on you in order of how you raise your hand using the emoji, and then we'll bring you up here and you can ask Angelo the questions directly about your startups. So please start to raise your hand and I'll call on you in order, whoever's first. Okay, so Angelo, the trends are blowing fast towards AI. I'm using it a lot on a daily basis. I am implementing it into the company. Like it's a really useful technology. And it seems like it's going to proliferate into every single sector, including AR, VR, as much as anything. Can you talk about like what are the trends, the high level trends you're seeing from an investor's perspective? And where are you currently focusing your time on placing these $1 to $5 million investments?
So yeah, good question. So and by the way, I also do advising and investing much smaller checks, and then I just make sure I stay clear of anything that's competitive with HP. So I'll kind of make comments across both my little angel checks as well as kind of HP's perspective because I think that's helpful. Obviously, we've done 3 computer vision investments, right? And including Mojo Vision, right? Because they can do edge detection, right, with their contact lenses for people with seeing disabilities, which is going to be one of their first use cases, right? Soldiers in the field, right? You want to be able to look at things that you can't see otherwise. So it's like investing in AI, it's like easy, not easy peasy, but just like everything else, it's like, okay, you have to understand like generative AI is just mind blowing. I can't tell you the number of investors who, no one's looking. Okay, hey, this stuff is hard to understand. This stuff is hard to follow. Like there's so much insane technological innovation because it's a relatively new field. There's so much change in the business models, like Meta, with the open models. There's so much research being done. There's so much money. Oh, and by the way, the valuations are also insane. And then someone comes and kills you, like DeepSeek, right? It's like, whoa, right? So this is by far and I've been doing this now for 9 years, by far the hardest space I've ever looked at as an investor because it's so expensive and it's so fast changing and so much is happening behind closed doors. So you can just shrug and say, there's $1 trillion company you have to compete with the startups. Who cares? Obviously we care, but big deal. But now it's like, ugh, these people because it's so expensive doing the LLMs, and also because I think the LLMs can really eat up a lot of stuff. That's why I'm spending time kind of picks and shovel, right? Like I already made an investment, which we haven't announced, in kind of the edge compute space. It's like that CPU, GPU collaboration space, because it's just like all these GPUs are sitting around, all these CPUs, if we could teach them to do AI inferencing, that would be amazing. So I think the unlocking value here is just absolutely insane. And there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for people to go after. Who's going to get it? Well, there are 100 factors that determine your success or failure. If you can kind of line them all up, you'll succeed. But I think there's just a huge amount of money to be made in this space. I'm very excited about it. So that's kind of like why I'm focused on, edge compute infrastructure, make that PC, make that workstation better, chip cooling, GPU sharing, CPU inferencing, collaboration, burst to the cloud. It's expensive. The other area is developer tools, whether you're working on an LLM or not. I think it's fascinating, right? These people are getting paid a ton of money and they spend half their time doing kind of crap work. Um, so it's just like, why are we paying all these people who we can't hire enough of to do it? Now, obviously, coding assistants, et cetera, are threatening some of their jobs, right? Or slowing down the growth. So we'll see what
When
happens.
you say they're being paid a lot of money but doing bad work, who are you referring to? Are you saying the people that AI can replace?
I shouldn't have said bad work. They're doing low value added work, right? If you're an ML ops engineer, if you're a data scientist, right, and you're getting paid three, four, $500,000, and then you're mucking around in the mud, cleaning up your data, managing your experiments, tracking it. It's like, oh, you're so smart. Like you know all this experience. You went to this great training, and just part of the job is like, well, I've got to like, it's like, oh, don't waste 2 hours cleaning up your unstructured data. Don't waste 2 hours, tracking your experiments. I want a single pane of glass. Like I want somebody to help you be more productive because you are paid deservedly a lot of money. And I want to make sure you're focused on the stuff with your brain versus the mundane, tedious stuff. We all have mundane, tedious stuff to do, right? In our lives that doesn't use our brain power. If you're
So
if
you're
you're working
saying
for me,
the AI replaces the wasted time of repetitive tasks for high paid employees. Is that what you're referencing?
that's what I'm looking for. Yeah, like that's actually like the developer tools. It could either be for the data science. Yeah, help them with that. Help me. I'm a subject matter expert, maybe, right? But wouldn't it be great if I can now code with AI because I can, right? So like a low code, no code too, I think is super useful as well. So anything that kind of unlocks that value, whether you're the PhD Stanford Berkeley person or you're me, right, who hasn't taken an engineering course ever, right? Like anything I can do to help someone kind of leverage tools better, I'm excited about. So, and
Okay,
then the
makes
last thing
sense.
I'm looking at kind of, AR, right? I said I can't talk about humane, right? But like, AR spatial computing, and it's an area of interest for us because like, okay, we did, mainframes, we had servers, we had PCs, we have mobiles, we have tablets. How are we not going to have something in our ears or in our eyes or in our necklace, right? Eventually as a next spatial computing platform. And then, even though I said like LLMs are the hardest space I've looked at as an investor, we're looking at applications and then go to your point beforehand, right? Like looking at workflows, like where can you fit in, right, to add value? And then like what are the different bumps that can get in your way to getting adopted? Because sometimes it's just as silly a thing as like a workflow. Like, sorry, people aren't used to doing it in this step, and your progress, your product requires you to change your workflows, and people just won't do it, right? Because it's a little bit harder initially to learn it. So
Yeah,
stop for a
it
second.
it seems like there's one side of this where you're investing into AI and things of that sort. Sid, I'll get to you in 10 seconds. And then there's the other side of it where even if you're not an AI company, you're a VR startup or an AR startup, you need to be using these AI tools for marketing. Uh, you know, it seems really powerful if you can figure out how to automate some of your marketing to acquire users with AI.
I guarantee, I would bet 4 to 5 of you will get the question in every VC meeting: How is generative AI going to impact your business?
Yep.
And it's got to be marketing and right because it's just disrupting everything. I've been doing this for, like I said, 9 years. I've been in Silicon Valley for 22 years. This is just mind blowing. The amount of opportunity here and how I think it's going to just like reach into everything we do.
At first, I thought it was all fluff and total hype. And then I started observing that all of the smartest people and the most rich people in the world care deeply about this and are spending, half their time learning AI. And once I reframed it in that sense, I'm like, look, if Elon Musk and Sam Altman are going to spend all their time building AI, like probably Don Stein should learn a little bit about, and like that was my red pill to dive into this. But that's the point I want people to really understand is like you have to have a play here.
You guys know Charlie Fink, right? From
Yeah.
Forbes. You know, pretty friendly with him. And he's like, I've been doing this for a while now. And like this AI thing, like I've never seen this much excitement around a space, right? And like he's gone really deep in the XR, VR, AR space. And it's just like,
Yep.
yeah, he's a great, I think, viewer of our industry.
He wrote my first ever VR coverage article, actually, or maybe
Ah,
my second
excellent.
one. Yeah, good
Excellent.
guy.
Excellent. OG.
All right, let's bring up some of the founders for questions so we can have them talk with you directly. Angelo, Sid, hello, hello. Go for it. Sid's calling us from Mars. Hello, Sid.
Nice.
It's nice and chilly here in Mars. Angelo, it's great to be here. Thank you for so much for kind of downloading all the insights and wisdom that you have onto us. It's a pleasure. I run a VR AR healthcare startup here in Boston. We develop clinically validated XR interventions that help reduce stress, anxiety, depression, but also helps hospitals save money by reducing patient length of stay and improving patient experience. Um, my question to you is really along the lines of like, obviously, XR in healthcare, it's not new. It's been around for a while. You guys, I believe, had made an investment in Behavior, which obviously now is merged with XR Health as of like 2 days ago. What's your perspective on the use of immersive tech in what we call these like captive settings, like hospitals and healthcare? And do you see like a market that is large enough for investors to be attracted to, into?
So just a small question. We did not invest in behavior. We partnered with them. The business unit partnered with them a while ago. So just an
Okay.
FYI.
Okay.
I like, I think it's sorry. So many people have gotten burned with VR, right? That they're like a lot of these people just like stop. I'm not going to talk to you about it. So I
Yep.
personally think, but I'm in the minority. Yes, the healthcare sector is like 24% of the US GDP. What are you talking about? You try to help patients, right? Who spend how many hundreds of millions of hours in hospitals. How is that not a big enough market? So I'm still a believer, but the market's is speaking, right? If you look at the valuations of all these XR or VR companies, and I'm in I have to say, like, I'm in the minority, but I'm like, yeah, of course. Because remember the snow, the patient burn game with the snowman? Like, how is
Hmm.
that not better? I think part of it's just workflow. I think part of it's like the equipment. People break it. It's hot. It's heavy. Who gets nauseous? Who gets sick? Who can't figure out how to turn it on? So it's when you're selling to enterprises, I think the workflow part is massive, just massive. And I'm seeing
Mm.
this like with my board seat at Pixo, with advising other companies in this space. Like it really is amazing how many little things can go wrong that could
Yeah.
stymie your startup, right?
Hmm.
Cleanbox, Amy, she's doing great, right? Right. So it's just like, okay, like she's cleaning a bunch of headsets, like someone's using them, right? Like that's a pick and shovel. Like she's doing okay. So there's clearly demand for
What
these
was
headsets are
what was
going in
that
there.
company, Angelo? I don't think I caught that. What do they do?
Amy Hendricks, her company's called Cleanbox.
It's a
Um,
UVA sanitizing box, John, that sanitizes the VR heads in less than 60 seconds.
right. And
Oh,
she's just like meat and potato. I think that's what she's got to be in this. I think if we're in this industry 5, 6, 7 years ago, everyone was a Star Trek fan, everyone was a Star Wars fan, everyone wants to see this. Everyone's like, this is amazing. Snow Crash, it's here. And then like
Hmm.
and I think it's like the people who are still in the business, all of you, and like Amy, just put in the work. It's like meat and potatoes. Like she doesn't have $1 billion valuation, but she's still here, right? 5, 6 years
Hmm.
later, and just doggedly working. Pixel, I'm in love with the company, right? They don't have $1 billion valuation, but Sean just kills himself and he's just like blocking and tackling. And it's not the dream we all had, right? And it's not, he
Yeah.
doesn't have ARR, he doesn't have, so he's not in 17 countries. But like you just gotta be like, okay, we've got to put our fantasies, our wishes aside. This is the nicest industry I've ever worked in. And I've worked in a bunch of industries, and no kidding, this is nicer than CRM or ERP or cybersecurity. But it's like, no, this is nicer than even gaming. And I'm not a nonprofit guy, but I feel like a lot of people in the VR AR industry are really mission driven, right? And are just kind of helping each other. But it's just like, okay, like we've got to make money. Like when I joined a
Yeah.
startup called Couchsurfing, like I was the head of BD, and they were such a mission-driven organization. And I was like, okay, we're here to make money. We're raising VC funding. Like we want your technology to work. We want patients to be better. But like we've got to figure out the business model too. Otherwise, we're not going to be here in a year or two.
Yeah, and I think we certainly are in that. So we just about a month ago we got the data readout from our clinical studies, and we more important than the clinical outcomes, which are important for hospitals. We reduced patient length of stay by 2.5 days. And when you scale that across thousands of hospitals, that's potentially hundreds of millions of dollars that hospitals can save. Now we have this amazing, fantastic output data from our studies, and we're just like, figuring out, okay, why is it that we're having a hard time landing this deal? Because investors either are just not interested, or as you said, they're kind of burned from AR VR. As soon as they hear AR VR, they're like, just don't even talk to me, versus like ones that are like, well, we have an underlying business case here, and AR VR is just the delivery method.
So there's so much negativity around AR, around VR, I would say at this point, it's like you can't just be two founders and a dream and like just crazy intelligence and passionate about it. It's got to be like, hey, look, I've been in business for 4 years. I've sold to 7 hospitals. My net retention rate is this. My gross retention rate is that. Oh, and by the way, I happen to do this in VR. So if I were you all, I would say like, hey, we help
Mm,
patients get out of recovery rooms faster. We deliver this through tablets, TV screens, phones, and VR headsets, and just talk about the business first and say, like,
mm,
hey, look, here's my ARR, here's my gross margin rate, and then make VR. That's just one of the 3, 4 modes we deliver our
right.
technology in. It's
Yeah.
just not a hot space right now. Whereas if you say, well, Gen AI, oh, let me look at your email, right? And if you
Right.
say I'm VR, oh, I dropped the ball. Right, it's 17 messages down on my LinkedIn feed now.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. But
Yeah.
thank you for that
Don
perspective.
knows. So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
this
I
is
made
like
it
just
through.
meat and
Thank you, Sid.
potatoes.
Yeah, I made it through. Yeah, no, I, you have to have the metrics, and honestly, it's probably even harder to raise for VR because you need better metrics because there's less TAM. So it makes the sentiment even more tough to overcome. Um, so yeah,
Yeah,
we appreciate the insights. It's not easy to hear, but it's important that I think everyone understands the context of the sentiment. Raj, do you want to unmute yourself there? Ask your question. Also, Raj, what is that in your background? Is that a punching bag? Kicking bag? Your mic is not working.
Me now?
Yep, perfect.
Yep. Sorry about that. Hi, Angelo. Thank you for doing this. I am actually have been working in the VFX and animation industry, writing tools for artists and other people. So I was wondering how would be an idea of generating 3D synthetic data for AI companies for training large world models. Would that be a good idea for a startup?
can you
And
repeat that? It's a little bit echoey, so can I ask you to kind of repeat the question again? It's a little hard to understand you.
oh sure. So I was wondering if creating 3D synthetic data for training AI models, would that
If you
be
got it, I think I understand now.
Angel,
A
can you
lot of
repeat it
people,
as well, just so everyone?
sure. Uh, is it a good idea to create unique data sets for companies to
yes,
train their AI models on?
yes, and to
So
sell it to companies which are training AI models?
I doubt it because a lot of people have unique data. Okay,
Mhm.
you're a radiologist at Cedar Sinai in LA, and Desai is a radiologist at Harvard. Well, they both have unique data sets, and they both proprietary. But are they really different from each other? Right. So if it's like, where's the value there? Now, I have an old colleague. He's got buoy. He has a startup whose name I'm forgetting. We've got a bunch of buoys out in the ocean for the last 6, 7 years. Right. Like, oh, I have no idea how he's doing. I assume he has an opportunity to sell that data because that's unique data. Because like, who the hell has that? And like, I don't think he had any idea. Like, oh, like this is amazing. But if you're trying to go out and create data, like, well, why can't I just do the same thing? So if you've been collecting data that no one else has comparable data to, you can have unique, you can actually proprietary. but is it comparable to someone else's? Great. You have 10,000 radiology scans. I have 10,000 radiology scans. They're kind of the same, right? So like how much value are you going to get for it? Not much. So a lot of stuff's been sucked up from the open internet. And then B, a lot of data is not incomparable. So I'm not sure of the value. I say this without having to ever be able to try to kind of buy data. But my sense is I'm not getting a lot of pitches in that space. And I'm getting pitches from people who are like helping with structured data, people who are doing synthetic data. But even that is like it's becoming more commoditized, and is my general sense without being deep into it. But I would not be excited about that because if you can go create data, so can somebody else pretty easily.
So you find the value is in the data management as opposed to the data creation?
If the data is truly incomparable, right? This guy used to know.
Like the ocean, yeah.
It's like, oh, it's like I have to think that's going to be useful to somebody who's trying to do weather forecasting, tsunami warnings, something, right? Versus like yeah, how many radiologists are out there? How many medical schools are out there? So I'd really kind of like my hypothesis would be your data is comparable to 10 other people, and therefore that how you really going to be able to monetize it? Because if there are 10 suppliers of that data, okay, like where's the leverage? Because you're going to say it's a dollar per mil, and I'm going to be like it's 95 cents per million images. Someone else goes 90 cents, and then it's like okay, like neither one of us has this great data that's unique that we could leverage and make money off of. So I think it's much better to have a scalable model when you're writing an algorithm or software that helps you kind of manage the data, clean up the data, make sure it's secure, lots of other things that are scalable, and then hopefully you are better at than other people versus trying to you say create the data. It's like, okay, like how are you creating this other? Is it synthetic data? Do you have a bunch of sensors that are like picking up the data from the real world? Okay, well, what about YouTube? What about the IoT device maker? What about Amazon Ring? Like, I would just want to really think through why is your data incomparable? And then you could, if it's incomparable, no one else has it, then like, okay, there's probably a customer out there for you.
Awesome,
But if it's
man.
easy for you, it's easier for your competitor too. And then it's just like there's no money for you to be. There's very little. It's gonna be hard for you to make money.
Thank you, Raj. You got what you needed there.
Yeah. Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Cool. Yeah, very interesting perspective, Angelo. All right, let's pull up Sean here. I see you're next up here. What's up, Sean?
I'm meeting myself.
Cool hat.
Oh, thank you. Hi. So I'm a XR developer from Toronto. We did some work initially with the HP Omnicept, and that we built. Actually, we got some support from the Canada Media Fund and built a prototype for a biometric game that used all of the stuff that you get off the Omnicept. And then sort of continued forward in the thinking around kind of like integrations between biometrics and XR, and working with these guys that they built a pretty cool prototype of I've got blur on here. Actually, hold on, let me unblur myself. That it's like a face shield that goes onto an XR headset, and then it's got a thing that allows you to have a sensor that does a HRV. And so a lot of the same frameworks that we built to build the game, allow us to do in-game kind of in-world, in immersive world kind of stuff with things like HRV. Their product right now is more of a stress training kind of thing, where it does a bunch of profiling and builds a profile of kind of your stress responses. But I'm curious to know, just in terms of like, there isn't a lot of action around the Omnicept at HP of late. Is there interest in that like intersection of like biometrics and XR? I thought it was really kind of been interesting enough for me to keep going on it in a development sense. But just sort of wanted to gauge the interest around biometric XR.
Yeah. So I love the idea of the Omnicept and kind of getting all that data. But right here we are 4 years later, and we're not selling 1 million headsets a year, right? With kind of all this sensor fusion, and it pains me, right? Because I think there's such potential. So I think this is kind of a question of 80-20, and kind of like what Don was saying earlier, like we have to have like a 2D version of the XR stuff. Like it seems great. So then like, look, I've got my watch on, I've got my Aura ring, like they can do heart rate variability, they can do pulse, they can do all these things, and it's not as exact, and it's not as precise. But I think it's just like, okay, are people going to actually pay for it? So a lot of stuff makes so much sense in theory. Like like Oscar VR, like I love that company, right? And he's actually succeeded at it. Like, of course you want your surgeon practicing 3 times how to set your tibia before they do it because they'll do it faster, they do it with less error. But then getting people to actually like adopt that technology, it's like, oh, what a headache. Like, why am I having to explain this to you? And it's just like, well, there's a setup cost. Where am I gonna set this stuff up? So I love the idea of it, but I am not seeing a huge amount of uptake, right? For a kind of chatter around people using kind of, metrics about ourselves, and it's all about the AI, right? As Don was saying earlier with the glasses. So part of it's like, okay, self-knowledge, I'm aware when I'm stressed, I get a headache, or I can look at my Garmin watch, or I can look at my Apple Watch. So I'm not seeing a lot of activity in this space right now. In terms of HP strategy, like I'm not in corporate strategy anymore. I like my current job and I have enough to do. So I'm like, you guys tell me what you think is of interest and I'll kind of down select from there. So I don't know. So I can't comment on kind of HP strategy. It's a public company. Obviously, I'd get in trouble if I did. But as a personal investor, just speaking, I'm not seeing a lot there, unfortunately. Even though things make sense in theory, it's like 80-20. It's like not enough people feel the pain, or it's not deep enough, or they have another solution that kind of gets it there already, and it doesn't cost them anything extra. Did that answer your question, Sean?
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Sure thing.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah, okay, we're short of time, so I want to pull people up, but I'll leave my comment for later. All right, Daniel, let me bring you up here. Daniel is pioneering education right now. Daniel, you want to lay down your 2D strategy you told me about yesterday?
Yeah. We don't call it 2D, we call it multimodal. So Angelo, thanks you so much for your time. So yeah, first of all, our approach was to go razor sharp in terms of the market segment. So we went to higher ed, business school, partnered with INSEAD, built comprehensive curriculum ready, immersive case studies. So the Harvard model, written case studies are broken, nobody likes to read them. We do them immersive. I pride our achievements. So we've done XR, for various years. I pride the fact that we have a real use case, like that, which is comprehensive. Yes, we are going multimodal, but what advice could you give me in terms of like, I was sure that the hardware manufacturers would be proud to, pick us and say, hey guys, look, business schools I'm talking about, piloted in Harvard, Cambridge, Duke, Ross, you name it. Everyone, yeah. And of course, INSEAD, a third of their faculty are teaching our cases, and we're now just going to markets. We do anticipate kind of a wave of adoption, but still, it's very, very small market. So how can I balance this real use case, small market? Yes, multimodal is kind of where we're going, but still, I was expecting, things going with a much bigger splash.
We all did. I'm in this WhatsApp group with a bunch of emerging VCs, and they're like, "We're not here because it's easy. We're here because we thought it would be easy." So I think that much applies to lots of people. I would just put the shoulder to the boulder and just keep doing what you're doing. Like forget about VCs for a minute or a year or 6 months, and just be like, "Okay, I'm gonna go to Wharton. I'm gonna go to Kellogg. I'm gonna go to USC, and just keep trying it." I was advising this company to try to do this in physics. Like, duh, of course you want to teach high school students physics in VR. And like, they couldn't get anywhere, right? And it's just like mind blowing. Like, despite the efficacy data, despite the intuitive, like, of course it's going to be better. It's just like, it's expensive to make the stuff. So you just have to run your small business, right? And you have to run up your ARR contracts. And my advice is like, don't get distracted with like unless your business is fundamentally changed, unless there's like this huge technological business inflection you've had, just don't waste your time on me, on the other VCs. Spend your time on your product, spend your time on your customers, make them happy, get up your net retention rate to 90%, and then come back in a year and be like, hey, fucker, hey, you disbelievers. Like, look, my ARR is $1 million. I've got like 5% turn. Don't you want to invest in me? And then, you know, sometimes I advise people like, you need to be a VC funded company? Like, I'm just going to run this small business. Maybe I'll take some money from a mighty capital, right? Someone who's like happy with, I'm going to just make just like 3x return. Like at a certain point, like, hey, you're living in Spain and you're making $250,000. You're set, right? Like you're in the good life. Like you always need to risk it, right? Because doing a startup, right, is financially irrational. Right? It's fun. I am so glad I did it. I recommend everyone does it, but just be aware, right? It's just like, hey, I need to understand the facts on the ground, which is that. And by the way, I make investments in seed stage companies. So every time I do it, I think I'm going to make 20x, but I know I'm wrong 95% of the time. And it's like, okay, I have to have two thoughts in my head, two opposing thoughts in my head, and continue on with my life and not think about it too much. So I think just keep doing what you're doing, make your customers happy. I find this, by the way, like I'm advising the Spanish European startups, like stop fundraising. Like, no, in America, you raise for 3-4 months, 6 months maximum, then you stop. You don't go to the well because every time you raise $10,000 or $15,000 and you're marking your price, you're making it that much harder to get the valuation at the next go round. Because why in the world, if you just raised $10,000 from Don, am I going to come in with $1 million check at a valuation that's different next month? It's like, no, I'm not a schmuck. I want Don's valuation. So
Yeah.
what did you do technologically? What did you do
Mm.
business wise? Otherwise, like
Amazing. Yeah.
you knew all this.
Yeah, no, amazing. Thanks for this advice, for this encouragement. It means a lot to me.
Sure, happy to. I mean, I wish I was an engineer. I wish I had the gumption and the intelligence, right? So I like encouraging folks when I can.
Yeah.
But Angelo, to your point, Daniel and I had this same conversation yesterday saying like it's not really worth pursuing the VCs whatsoever. I think for some angels it makes sense, or to your point, like the mighty capital that's okay with a 2 or 3x. But I think as far as the best use case of your time, if you're a VR, AR, unless your home run metrics are out of the park, there's really no point in pursuing the VC fundraise route at this current time.
Because we have learned the hard way to
Mhm.
discount. Now, like, you know, I've been doing this for whatever, 9 years. And so it's like, oh, we're going to do this. We're going to do that. Like, I know you believe it. I don't think you think you're lying to me, but you're also, you have to be not delusional, optimistic to be a founder, right? Because you're paying yourself nothing. You're working all these hours. You're stressing yourself out. So you think you're going to sign that contract with HP, with Ford, with whoever, and then it never comes, right? Because you think it's going to happen. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. It's self-selecting groups. So
Yeah.
yeah, don't
Okay,
just
so
just promise yourself. Don't talk to any VCs for 6 months, right? Or until you hit XYZ and ARR.
And Angela, you have a lot of HP computers in schools. So like, would you implement something that Daniel's building, or what would that process be like if you were to do something like that?
So
with
I
HP?
think he's doing like second, you know, post-secondary. He's doing graduate
Yeah.
school MBA,
Correct.
what he
MBAs, yeah.
mentioned. So what's the question, Don? I'm sorry. Would I
So
do
like,
this in a
if Daniel wanted to, you know, put his software on some HP computers that are in universities, is that something that HP does and has like an accelerator incubation program with startups?
we have done partnerships with companies like Behavior, and I don't know the details about the relationship, but that was the idea, is that things would come preloaded, or we'd have a store and be like, here you go, 5 select partners. The problem is when you're trying to partner with a larger organization, they only have the bandwidth. Forget about the money. They only have the intellectual capacity, the procurement person, the negotiation person, the cybersecurity person. They can only do X deals per year. And like, are they going to bother to choose you if you're not going to help them move the needle? So to do some stuff because it's like, ooh, gee whiz, dang, it looks cool. But if I'm the GM, I want 4 of my 5 or 5 of my deals to be like, no, I want a deal that's going to move the needle. And if you're doing this little, if you're doing like only top tier MBA programs, and I'm in charge of HP's education group, are you going to be enticing to me, or am I going to want to do something like for all elementary school students or all high school students? Like, it's got to be something that SVP is going to be like, you're going to help me move the needle or give my salespeople something to talk about. So I think you just got to think about how the other person on the other side of the table is making money and what are their motivations.
Yep. Great insights. Okay, I was just trying to do some BD for Daniel there. Richard, come on up. Richard,
Good for you.
come on up here. Richard just packed up his life, moved to San Francisco. So
Welcome.
here's a real founder committed. Yeah.
Yeah, coming from Chicago, so I'm appreciating being outside and on a web call, in February. But yeah, thank you, Angelo. Appreciate you being here today. My question is that I'm trying to build like a VR motion capture and education platform, but I'm kind of having trouble just getting things started, getting people to get behind the idea that I have. And I recently met with somebody who's working with like humanoid robotics, and he's interested, like he's building his own startup, but he kind of wants me to work with him. And I could see like what he's building would actually like relate very well to what I'm kind of interested in building. So I'm thinking, so my question is, as a VC, would you be more interested? Like how do VCs feel about like humanoid robotics these days? And would that be like a stronger pitch to VCs versus like just kind of like a VR education platform?
I would say categorically yes. More VCs will be interested in a humanoid robot than they are in VR training or VR capture. So that if they're both equal, two startups working together, I'm a big against because it's even harder. So it's just like do your startup, do his startup. You can't do both. But if you do both, someone who's just as smart and smart is going to work twice as much as you, and you're going to get beaten. And it's already hard enough. So you have to kind of decide which way you want to go, but don't try having two startups. You're just going to have different incentives and motivations, right? I wouldn't try to tie them together. So if he wants to take you on as a co-founder, that's great. Or if you want to be his first hire, that's great too, depending on, where he's at and where you're at. But you have to just do something that you're interested in because like you're not going to have the financial returns. You're not going to have the customer pats in the back. Like it's going to be such a slog. I am so grateful for the founders who I've invested in. They do 20 every year. They're doing 20 times more work than I do, right? And it's like, oh my gosh, they've been doing this for 5, 8 years. They broke up with their best friend, or they're having marital strife, or they're living someplace they don't want to live. And it's just like, so you only do this if you're really loving it. So like when I advise or in companies, I'm like, look, I assume I'm going to make zero money on this, and I'm just going to learn, have fun. I like you. You're going to take my advice. You can't do it just for the money. Okay, so you have to assume like this is not going to work out, but I'm going to try, and I hope it does work out, and you make $100 million, right? But don't do something and it's like, oh my God, I didn't make any money. And after 3 years, you're like, life is trash. Like going into Vegas with $100 in your pocket. Like if you can't lose $100, don't go to the casino with $100 in your pocket, right? So don't invest 3 years or 2 years of your life unless you're like, okay, like I did the start for 2 years, didn't make very much money, and it was fine. Wife was not thrilled. But it's just like, we made the decision together, jointly sort of informed. And then I went and got a real job at HP. But it's just, and I've seen people like break up with significant others, friends, just family stuff. It's just like, you got to do what's good for you at this point in life with kids, with house, with car, with student debt, whatever. But you have to assume like, hey, if this doesn't work out, where am I in 2 years? So just kind of keep that in mind. And again, goes back to the, do you need to go down the VC route or not?
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. I know it's not very optimistic, but I'd much rather give you this advice now and stop you 6 months sooner, or just make you say like, no, I want to do this. And then you could have more conviction and succeed.
Yeah, I just find it hard kind of building on my own and, trying to get momentum on the idea. So that's why I kind of like the idea of partnering with somebody.
It's absolutely normal what you're going through. It's not you, right? Yeah, and having someone else to bounce things off of, I think makes life so much easier. I love being like the head of BD at the startup because like the founder would just give me, the CEO would give me ideas or like marching orders every other week, and then I'd go off and do it. And then like I had the fun part of his job. He had to deal with firing people, hiring people, leases, fundraising, all this stuff. And thank God he had another co-founder to work with, right? And me to a very much second order degree. Yeah, if you want company, go get company. I think and if that's going to make you happier. That's good. It's good to know what you like and dislike about being a founder.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
Don, you're on mute.
Great, Creston, Richard. And yeah, Angelo, we appreciate the empathy there. I think we all have had some degree of that experience in our journey.
Yeah.
All right, last question, because I know we're hitting the time here. Amrit, can you, I know you had your hand up earlier, but I think you lowered it and then you fell to the back of the line. I feel bad, but can you power through it so we can get Angelo out of here on time? And then I have
Yeah.
a little conversation after. All right, cool.
Yeah, I'll do that. And yeah, it's been a pleasure hearing you speak, Angelo. So thank you for being here. So quickly, my startup, we're building a social media platform in augmented reality, looking to connect people in the real world organically and build real connections between people. And fundamentally, you know, it's a $1 billion idea, and it's one of those things that I can go on building indefinitely, given my position right now. So it really is that sort of cockroach mentality of, you know, it's going to happen. But the question I have is more so in terms of going to market. And I love the fact that you approach this from a business development standpoint, and because myself being a technical founder, I'm quite in the weeds with the tech demo and getting into the code. And the problem I have is having to balance that with the go-to-market strategy, and also trying to figure out the I guess going through the venture capital route to get someone on board with that aspect of the business too, because it is a lonely journey, like we all said. Like between us, I mean, I've been doing this for about 8-9 months now, roughly, and it's quite the contrast to anything else in terms of being on your own with all of this. So my question to you is, the market that we're approaching is practically everyone and their grandmother, and the idea of, you know, whittling it down to how you can go to market with a niche group of people and say, hey, try this social media platform out, and you know, if it can give them value, then obviously we can grow organically. But that's the problem I'm having. I don't have a cold call approach to anyone or anything to do other than what
to be careful, Angelo's time. Can you hit it with a question?
Yeah. So I'm just wondering, how would you recommend going to market and with a wide audience? And my initial thought was going to universities and helping freshers socialize, so pitching that to universities. But I'd love to hear if you had an idea on wider audience sort of targeting.
I think you're interesting to thanks for the question. I think you're interested going to a specific niche like universities is smart, right? Because if you're trying to create a marketplace, a social area, and it's good to have people just kind of connect in a specific use case, a city, university, etc. Right? So people just have more in common with each other. That said, I think that is a really hard space. I looked at this space too. I'm not sure. Oh, I'm going to get his name wrong. Philip Rosedale, which I actually feel like a fool because he's very famous, super charismatic, super smart. I hope he never hears this. Super well read, and like he just beat himself up against it. And he had lots of experience in the space, and like I don't think the space is ready yet, unless there's a fundamental shift in the technology. In terms of the VR headsets are getting no eye strain, no headaches, lighter, better battery life, and we're nowhere near that. I don't see, and I say this reluctantly because, like, well, someone else failed 5 years ago. Who cares? You're a different entrepreneur. It's a different time. Lots of factors are different. I'd be very concerned about the space for you because, like, he was so well positioned to win in the space, and like he couldn't make it happen. And I don't think anything has. Let's say you're the equal entrepreneur as him. Okay, I don't think anything has fundamentally changed in the market now to make it that much easier for you to succeed. Like, I don't think the ground is any more fertile than it was for him. So that's why I just be like, oh, like, what is the angle here? Like, he was so well connected, had so much money, had done this before in 2D world, and he couldn't make it happen. So I say this having met him a few times, not having studied the space, and I haven't looked at the space in 5 years. So it's very old information, but I'd be very concerned. Like going to even to university, it's just like, wait, so you want the kids to stay in their rooms and put on headsets? Like, what university president's going to get behind that? Okay, so you could try to do guerrilla marketing, but you know, I have an 18 and a 21-year-old. They want to go out and have fun and meet people in the real world. So I just come at this with a little bit of a good bit of skepticism, just to tell you the truth.
Yep. I just a little follow up, and I'll try and make it quick. Yeah, I entirely agree with everything you've said. I think the only premise I'm coming from is the idea that this is forward looking at the frontier of what's going to be around the corner. And I think talking to VCs, it's that whole idea of projecting the idea, look, you're early on, we're early into this. This is the Bitcoin at $0 moment. And it's the idea that this is around the corner and it will be built. I think I've been approaching this from, avoid saying the word AR and go with the feature set that is AI driven to sort of pitch this to VCs. But I've been thinking more and more about this. I'm like, this is literally the product to change the world. But the fundamental truth behind it is no one's going to see it until it's there and ready. So me being super early, like you said, me being so I guess premature in terms of going to market, I'm almost pitching this like I'll go and indefinitely building this, and I'm going to convince the VCs and the investors to such that, look, it's not going to be here today. You're investing in 2 years, 3 years when this is going to be a reality. And so I'm going to be building it regardless of the fact of what the other people believe in. And so here I am now today. And what I'm looking for those specific partners that see that and are on the longer term journey of, it's going to happen.
You're talking VR or AR? Sorry, I want to make sure I'm clear.
Oh, augmented reality with smart glasses.
Okay, so then I think you have a better potential pitch to try that, right? Versus VR. Because VR, I think it's just like, ugh. I think if you say with AR, you could try to make the pitch. Now is the time to do it. Everyone's going to be coming out with AR glasses in the next year or two. You look at all these investments that Meta, Google, and Apple have done. So I would try to kind of say like, so you've got to invest now in me when I'm just me and a dog, right? At a 10 million valuation or whatever it is. So you could try to make that pitch. I think that's a much better chance. And that's a 2% chance of getting funding versus a 0.2% chance of getting funding. Those VR.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I'm not in the VR space at all. Sorry, it must have been a miscommunication on my part. But yeah, completely. It's AR, XR, that sort of area. So thank you.
Sure thing.
Thank you, Amit. All right, Angelo, thank you for your time. Thanks for doing this. I really appreciated how genuine you are there. I think you clearly love founders, and also you've seen enough to be willing to warn people. And so I hope people, take some of the advice and think about it deeply. Thanks for doing that.
Pleasure to meet you all. Pleasure to talk with you. Don, I apologize, and everyone, I'm sorry I was late again.
Oh,
and
please.
Good luck to everybody.
What's your number one bit of advice for a founder? And then feel free to hop off. Like what do you see there?
In this space, it's sorry to say the dirty word, you're a business. You have to make money, right? It's so sad. Like having efficacy data is not enough. You've got to have like the ARR. You've got to have the name brand companies signing up. And then it's the VR part. The AR and AI part, okay, that's kind of still, it's, shiny, but still you're going to get a bit of skepticism around AR even. And I say this, and it's like, everyone's going to come out with glasses in the next couple of years, but so many VCs have gotten burned with it that, it just, you're running a business. Sorry to be boring and a business person, but that's what you're doing when you're talking to me and other people who are basically bankers. So good luck. We love you. You're all technologists and engineers, right? You're adding value. You're changing the world. We're just, hopefully enabling a few of you to get there faster.
That's awesome. And you're better than a banker. All right, everyone, clap it up for Angelo. Thank you for coming, Angelo. Appreciate
Thank you,
that.
everybody.
Yeah,
Take care.
Absolutely. All right, anyone wants to hang around, we're going to do a fundraise breakdown of some of the thoughts there. I'd like to get opinions on his sentiment. Okay. So clearly I'll give a quick summary and then open up the floor. He sees everything. He's been doing this since 2016. He has access to all the deals. He works and partners with top venture funds and accelerators. I think his big lesson is really be a cockroach, which we've talked about from a pure VR AR perspective, is you got to be the cockroach. When I did this last fundraise program, it was more obvious than I had ever seen it in my 10 years of doing this fundraising stuff that AR VR cannot be venture backed unless you have a 2D play or an AI play that is scalable. All the best founders seem to be picking up on that as far as the founders that have raised 20 million plus. Nenea was the first kind of sign of this because she's doing a few million ARR from her company, and yet she's leaning in on AI as the pivot. So I think a lot of stuff like that, like little breadcrumbs, has made it quite obvious that if you want to do the VR company in 2025, it's really just about revenue and maybe some angel investors. That's my perspective. I'm curious to hear what everyone thought after hearing Angelo there.
Yeah, I think, Don, if I can chime in a little bit here, I think in certain industries, of course, the goal is always to get to ARR, and I think in certain markets it's a lot easier than others. But I think in healthcare, where we are, and nobody buys product until it's proven to work. I mean, Applied VR, what they've raised $70 million so far, have gotten FDA clearances. They now have coverage from the insurance companies as well. And I think it's only now that they have sort of started to generate potentially meaningful amounts of revenue. And that's, I think the same thing went with Sean, who you had a few months ago from Harvard MedTech. So I think in certain industries, I think the first few years are focused on like generation of clinical evidence, and then kind of the ARR kind of domain begins. But I think it's still a challenge because we actually proved that hospitals can save millions of dollars. And yet the investors that we reached out to once we got this data were like, all right, great. Now come back to me after a few months. And it's these same investors that have told us, come back to us when you have the data. We went back to them, had the data, and then like, well, come back to us when you have 7 hospitals, using your product. So I think it's just, yeah, it's challenging for sure.
A good example or story of the healthcare side of this of AR VR. There was a company, without getting into the details, they're doing about 3 million a year, and it's all healthcare related. And they're working with all the top brands, you name it. They're paying them some amount of money and growing twice. 100% growth year over year over year, 3 years in a row. VCs look at that and they're like, okay, but the headset batteries don't work. These customers are too slow to scale. Like they name all the problems that's just fundamental to the issues of the hardware. And so even a company like that, that's literally done everything right, 100% of the stuff right, is getting a massive amount of pushback just because of the hardware and the logistics of keeping a piece of hardware in your hospital. I think, it's really tough. And then this applies, I think, across the board. Like I think I mentioned this, but I bought the Quest 3 from Amazon last month. I hate that. I mean, I passionately hate that thing. I think that was the most disappointing headset I've ever touched. It was just.
You mean the 3S? The 3S?
Yeah, the 3S. The other one I went and tried. I hated it. I thought it was the most disgusting headset I've ever touched. And like my feeling on that comes from because 10 years ago, the same headset I put on 10 years ago was like more or less the same size, the same weight. Yeah, it didn't have a cord, but like, anyways, I think the hardware is so messed up right now. I think Meta's doing a huge disservice to like putting way too much stuff into these headsets. And I think as a result, VCs are smart enough to know that people just aren't going to use this stuff at scale until it's better. Yeah, Daniel, go.
Just one thought, and yeah, we kind of discussed this on a one-on-one. So first of all, let's not give up. Technology. There will be a moment. There'll be kind of a technological advancement.
We need the moment.
And that will come. But I like to think about my current business with VR as just as kind of a marketing kind of channel. What I do is very visible. I'm going to place here like a Vimeo link to one of our clips recently where we did our first, 400 or what was it, 340 learners doing a VR AI in classroom, top execs. It's great marketing. Underneath, there needs to be the business, and business is about numbers. So if you could use XR for some marketing aspect, that might kind of you can keep that along as long as you have this kind of more wider part of the pyramid going for you.
Yeah,
Here
I
you
do
go,
like it as a
Jared.
marketing play.
Yeah.
But expensive
Shamelessly marketing myself right now with the
Expensive
link.
market. Hey, we like it. It's okay. It's expensive marketing though. Enrico.
Yeah. Just a comment. I've been doing this. Well, I have a company named Inmersis who has been doing XR applications for 15 years now. And there has been always this, for me, this thing in which a lot of apps that we do, it's more because our clients like innovation more than they want results. So for example, we have doing this for marketing for before we used the Oculus, like the first Oculus, like 15 years ago or 12 years ago. And there was like, this is awesome. And they put the headset and this is awesome, but it didn't have any like use, the real use, right? So then AR came, Metaverse came, then we are doing this. We are a 60 people company only focused on XR. So we have a lot of clients. We work for Colgate, DHL, Nestle, Coca-Cola. A lot of clients we work with marketing and also with training. And I would say that like most of them, what they're searching for is innovation, but not like the backup results of doing those things. So that's one of my biggest issue in which, okay, I go with Colgate, I put my training, we do a lot of investment on direction of instructional design, like we search for the what's like failing on this um, facilities, what we can do better. But at the end, when you want the feedback from the users, the employees, you cannot get them because at the end our clients are not looking for the real results. They are looking for, this is awesome, it looks great, but honestly most of the time or a lot of times is like you can implement something cheaper that it can work as well. For example, and I have a use case that we were doing some training for people walking inside the facilities, and they were trying not to get run over for the with the forklifts. And we are going to do a training for that. But at the end, we were thinking on a solution of getting cameras with AI and really getting data of how many people are not following the instructions of doing jaywalks or doing things that are really dangerous. And with that data, you can change more things than only doing training. So for now, I'm really doing this. I think XR is the future as well, but there's been a lot of years that it's only about innovation, and I think it's going to take time for really getting that grasp of the VR headsets or the AR lenses and so on. So I just wanted to share my experience of this industry.
That's an amazing example. I think that's the question that every investor seems to ask is, why does this need to be AR VR? And so I think a lot of the times you can answer with different technologies, but then when the answer is clearly that it needs to be AR VR, then you face the new hurdle of, well, our revenue is not really technically SaaS revenue. It's more agency work in the first 3 years. We did $2 million of revenue, but it's all marketing innovation budget. So VCs immediately discredit that to zero. It's the same problems every time, it seems like, with every XR startup from a VC perspective. So yeah, I think that's a great example of a real life scenario where it makes sense. All right. So I think that this has been really brutally eye-opening the last 3 months, really the last 6 months. AI has completely sucked all the energy out of the room. We've all been doing, most of us have been doing this, some 15 years, myself 10, some 5, some more, like whatever it is. We've all been doing this for a while. At least from my perspective, I've never seen this level of just zero interest in AR VR. At least from my perspective. And that's coming from just like purely looking at it from a VC perspective. I think from a founder perspective, you have a lot of opportunity to generate cash flow. And I think you can do that with a small team. And I think you can make yourself personally a lot of money in the short term. I don't really think that most AR/VR founders can fundraise a venture scale in the current mindset. So with that in mind, if you are committed to fundraising and you want to join this new school I'm doing, which is purely for fundraising, I'll put the link that you can join into this comment area. Basically, I put together all my lessons over the last probably 5 months. I've been putting this together. And it's like every single step I go through from designing the fundraise all the way through to actually negotiating and closing the capital. And each one of these little levels has a pretty well thought out page and some helpful stuff in there, as well as resources and materials. So I'm gonna I'm not sure exactly what I'm gonna do with this community or this page yet. It's not gonna be AR/VR specific. It's gonna be fundraise specific. But if you want to join, I'm putting the link in the chat. But the way that I'm thinking about, I guess, where I'm spending my time is that I think there's two distinct ways to build companies. One is the bootstrap mindset with some angel investing on the left side, and then one is the high growth venture backed, raising millions of dollars. I think there's very much opportunity for AR/VR founders on the bootstrapped angel side of things. And so that's why I'm going to try to keep our community purely AR/VR. And instead of talking so much about fundraising in our community, which obviously we'll still do that because it's in my DNA, I'm going to try to do some more tailored things towards AR/VR specifically on like getting traction and revenue. So next week we have Ryan part 2 who's going to come talk with us about Golf Plus. I mean, he's a good example of like, yeah, he raised 6 million bucks, but he's probably not going to go raise, big VC. Like he's just built a great bootstrap business at this point. And then I'm also going to start to like try to put in some more work on user acquisition. So I'm going to go study the, 20 founders we brought over the last year from the AR/VR space and try to understand what was the things they were doing from a user acquisition standpoint, and put those into some like more VR specific lessons. So that's how I'm going to try to do this going forward is Spatial Collective, purely AR/VR founders, not just about fundraising, just generally about like the industry, how you generate revenue, what are successful AR/VR founders doing. And then on the fundraise side, this will be purely for if you want to go raise venture, you want to do the, the big scale thing where you go try to raise the 5-10 million, then this is the community to also join in addition to the Spatial Collective. So that link is in the chat. If you want to join, you can just request and it's free to join that new one. Ragu, hello. We'll do last question here.
Yeah, quick comment. So we talked about VCs not being interested in VR. We know there's good solutions you can create with virtual reality. Has anybody tried, or do we know people who've tried crowdfunding for VR-based solutions, and have they had any luck or no luck? Any experience with crowdfunding where you're targeting more the user of the consumer of the product as opposed to a venture capitalist, which will have a different expectation.
If you go into the collective, Jonathan, Jonathan raised, I think it was 10 million from crowdfunding, and then Renji also raised 10 million or so from crowdfunding. So you can go in there and you can see the presentation I gave as well as read through the transcript or watch the video as well. But these two are the masters so far of crowdfunding. I do think if you're gonna, again, I think of a crowdfund the same as angel investing. Like it's the same category. You're basically just finding a bunch of angels online to give you money. So I do think crowdfunding is an amazing solution for VR AR startups because the products and everything is so visual. I think that's a great point. Yeah. Tom was just talking about, I don't know if he's still here. No. Yeah, he was just talking about launching a crowdfund as well. So it might be worth talking with him, Tom from Tribe.
Okay. Oh, cool. Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll look at those videos.
Cool. Okay. Other thoughts here, Rego? I'll put the link in there for you.
A quick question, Don. Obviously, that we all understand the term multimodal, and I think a few founders here talked about how VR is just one delivery mechanism. I think even Nanea, sort of in the last call that you had her on, mentioned that at the end of the day, it's as whatever devices the users use, she wants to be on there, and I think she also briefly kind of mentioned that they're indexing a bit more heavily in 2025 towards mobile. Could you talk a little bit about I mean, yeah, of course, you can always, immersive doesn't just mean XR delivered. Immersive can also mean if I play a 3D game on my mobile, it's immersive for me if I'm, spending enough sort of, yeah. So could you talk a little bit about that, the whole multimodal strategy, and how, given that the energy has been sucked out of the air because of AI, how can like founders like us maybe through some small pivots figure out that mobile strategy while the XR thing is in the back burner?
Yeah, someone described it I think actually it was Daniel that described it yesterday to me in this way. I thought it was a great way to frame it. He says, now we got to learn how to juice the orange. And he was basically saying, like, this VR thing we built is the orange, but people want orange juice. And so now we got to figure out, like, what are the things we're going to take from that VR product that we built and, retrofit it for a 2D experience. I thought that was a really good way of thinking about it. So if you have your orange already made, right, and it's working to some extent in VR, probably the biggest challenge is figuring out, obviously the biggest challenge is what is the actual value on a 2D multimodal type experience that still delivers on similar quality. And I think the challenge with that is you're basically going back to being a pre-seed startup where you need to come up with an alpha product, iterate on it, learn you did the wrong thing, throw it all away, build another beta. You know what I mean? Like, so you're, in a lot of ways, you're kind of like redoing
It's
your
a whole other
product.
company. Yeah.
It's a whole new beast. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's any real good advice on that other than just you really need to do the exact same thing you did with this VR stuff, but now redo it in a different product category and just hope that that has more revenue behind it than in the VR side of it. Now there are advantages to that. You're not completely starting over. You have your team, you develop repertoire, you have customer relationships, right? So those are things you should think about how you take advantage of. So if you have a customer that loves the VR headset product, maybe they're the one you go to and say, hey, I need an alpha paid pilot for this 2D multimodal version, and see if they'll give you, 25, 50K, whatever it is, to build that as like whatever, right? So that's probably the way to think about it, is what are the advantages you do have as a result of spending all this time doing what you've been doing? And then how do you take advantage of those so that you don't have to go through the full process in such a slow manner this time, and hopefully you can accelerate the product dev.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing I can tell you for sure, in all of these years running an XR healthcare company, it's I've definitely learned a shit ton of lessons.
Yeah.
So if anybody here has any questions on healthcare and XR, happy to be a sounding board.
Yeah, I think we've all learned similar lessons, unfortunately. It's good and bad. All right, so that wraps up our call for today. If you get a chance to connect with Angelo on LinkedIn or anything, send him a thank you. I thought he had a great perspective. I thought he was really open, and I liked his answers. Right or wrong, who knows? But at least he had a clear opinion, and I do appreciate that. So let me know any issues you have, I guess, in the next week around if you want to do this fundraise stuff. If you're gonna go the bootstrap route / the angel crowdfund route, great. Bring questions, please bring questions to Ryan next week. that's a really good opportunity to ask somebody that's raised 6 million, that's doing millions of revenue, that has the leading product in VR. Like, what did you do early on specifically? So bring questions for Ryan. There's not a ton of founders like him that I think can give us his advice. So I'm going to try to push the questions onto everyone else in the audience so we can get direct interactions going next week with Ryan. All right. 3, 2, 1. Thank you, everybody. Adios. High five. Oh, there's my camera. All right. I'll see y'all later. Goodbye. Thank you. I like that
See
high
you down.
five tradition.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course. Thanks, everyone. Bye.